So hang on, time out. The idea of conscious relationships. I have a concept of spirituality. Unity has the 5 principles. We're always looking and seeking for a better contact with our higher selves or God or whatever God is, so that we can live happier lives, so we can be more well-adjusted. And to me, that is spirituality. The things that I can learn about myself that help me show up in my life for my family and friends and community in better ways. The things that I can learn about myself that help me find a deep sense of peace or a sense of forgiveness or even some grace in this life, I see as spirituality. Today we're going to be talking about something called the drama triangle. And when I first did this exercise, if we could just have the first slide, love. Thanks, Drea. When I first did this exercise, I had the curmudgeon voice show up in my mind. We were in a ministry class, and we were talking about self-care. And we also did the Braxton Miller, what personality things, just trying to figure out, who we are and how we click so we can become better human beings. And they set up these three pieces of paper. And one said the victim, one said the rescuer, and one said the persecutor. So you could say hero, victim, villain, or other ones are just different roles we play. And this model was discovered by a guy named Stephen Karpman, and he called it the drama triangle. And he did it by working with people, and it was in 1968. And so since 1968, this has got legs. It's pretty common. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. And that's because this is something that's been repeated over and over again. And I remember having like that curmudgeon, I got to get up and I got to do this. And as we practiced the drama triangle, it was like a giant blind spot in my life that I didn't realize that I kept playing into. I had no idea. And that I've played each one of these roles, the victim, the villain, and the persecutor, or the hero. And it was a big flash for me that helped me discover how I've unconsciously played into these roles, but not only that, how I've subconsciously chosen people in relationships that speak this language. It's though I kept choosing the wrong person over and over again. And how many times can you blame someone else where you realize I'm the common denominator in the drama in my life? And how humbling that is. And so, if nothing else, I invite you to have a little bit of curiosity as we go through this, and have a little bit of a light heart. Because as we learn things about ourselves, we can go on to make brand new and inventive mistakes, but at least we're not making the same mistakes over and over again. And if we're going to do time in a body and grow old and die, wouldn't it be great if we could learn a little bit along the way and have some different lenses to see our lives through? So the drama triangle, what is it? So we got the victim, the persecutor, and the rescuer. And what Stephen Karpman found is people continually play these 3 roles over and over again. In fact, as I've done this, if you look at movies, it's almost like the same formula over and over again. You have a villain, you have a victim, you have a rescuer. We've been replaying these same things ad nauseum over and over again to our own detriment. Because what we'll find out later on in the talk is each one of these roles is disempowered. Each one of these roles is dysfunctional. And I have played each one of these roles to the T in my life. Let's go to the next slide, Drea. The problem is not the problem is the story we tell ourselves about the problem. Heaven forbid we just see it for what it is. We'll spin a story in our heads that completely take us away from any kind of solution and just roll this drama triangle over and over again. Let's go to our next slide. So these are we're going to read about a description. Right now we're going to do the persecutor. Controlling, seeks to dominate or manipulate others. Blames faults, finds faults when others are wrong. And in my family, this is kind of how it went. So if you could get really good at making something someone else's fault, or the government's fault, or society's fault, then you don't have to feel like the bad person. Because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to shift this feeling of badness from oneself to something else. And some people are really good with that. I've had times when I was really good. If I could make something someone else's fault, then I don't have to feel like I'm the bad person. But then I get into the place where I'm trying to win an argument, or I'm sourcing my self-esteem off of making someone else wrong. And it comes back to me not feeling like I'm okay. Like I don't want to be wrong because then I'm bad, which is a broken way to see oneself in relationship with others. Can be judgmental and aggressive, often driven by insecurity and the need to feel powerful. And it's a losing game when you try to source one's sense of self-esteem from making other people bad or wrong. Let's go to our next slide. The rescuer. In my mind, I call this Captain Save-A-Ho. Because in my life, I have been Captain Save-A-Ho. And that comes from me feeling like I'm not good enough. No one could ever love me if I had nothing to offer them. Why would I would unconsciously seek out people who needed saving instead of being with someone who's well, because I didn't feel like I was good enough for someone unless they obviously needed me. And what's really interesting, and I'll get to that in just a second. So the rescuer, I'll read this here. The rescuer's line is, "Let me help you." A classic enabler. The rescuer feels guilty if they do not go and rescue, and ultimately becomes angry and becomes a persecutor. And their help fails to achieve any kind of change. Yet the rescuer's rescuing has a negative effect. It keeps the victim dependent and doesn't allow the victim permission to fail and experience the consequences of their choices. The rewards derived from this rescuer role are the focus is taken away from the rescuer, who can also feel good for having tried and justified in their negative feelings. When one focuses our energy on another, it enables us to ignore our own anxiety or troubles. The rescue role is also pivotal because one's actual primary interest is really in avoiding one's own problems and disguise that is in the victim's needs. If I can find someone else to rescue, I don't have to examine how broken I am. Also, another thing with the rescuer is they will stress and worry about someone who never asked for their help in the first place, which allows them to be in complete denial of the nightmare their life is. And I've played this role in my life many times. And as I did this, I got to realize how much I played the different roles of the drama triangle. And it made me feel naked because I have lived my life completely unconscious, creating my own nightmare scenarios over and over again. And the fact that I don't have to do this now is liberating. And the fact that I get to grow on is beautiful. But the idea that many of us are doing this unconsciously is tragic to me. And it's important, and I invite you just to think about it. Just let it come up into your awareness in how we might be playing these different roles in our relationships. Let's go to our next slide. So the victim. No one likes to be the victim, but key notes of the victim are a powerlessness, feels unable to change their life circumstances, passivity, avoids taking action or responsibility, often driven by fear, low self-esteem, or a desire for attention or sympathy. Focuses on problems without seeking solutions. I'll read this one really quick. The victim in this model is not intended to represent an actual victim, but rather someone feeling or acting like one. The victim seeks to convince himself or herself or others that he or she cannot do anything or that nothing can be done for them. All attempts are failures. Despite trying hard, one payoff for this stance is avoiding real change or acknowledgement of one's true feelings. which may bring anxiety and risk. While feeling one is doing all one can do to escape it. As such, the victim's stance is, poor me. The victim feels persecuted, oppressed, helpless, hopeless, powerless, and ashamed, and seems unable to make decisions, solve problems, take pleasure in life, or achieve insight. The victim will remain with the persecutor, or, if not being persecuted, will set someone up as the role of the persecutor. The victim will also seek help, creating one or more rescuers to save the day, who will in reality perpetuate the victim's negative feelings. That's a rough one to see, if we can see in places where we've been the victim. One of the things I find most interesting about this is, especially if we grew up in family dynamics where we couldn't express a need, where we couldn't simply say, I need this. We unconsciously begin to manipulate our needs through playing one of these roles. I could say, it's interesting because I will sometimes, blame or get angry at the way the world is, as if to say, if the world wasn't this way, I would be successful or I would be happy. And in that, I'm placing any power I have to change the situation out into the world. It's not with me, so I live a life of being helpless. I've had situations where I come in as the rescuer and do all these things to rescue someone, and then they don't respond the way I think that they would respond, and then I turn into the persecutor. Well, I did this or I did that, and I'm just perpetuating a cycle of dysfunction. To be able to step out of this triangle, let's go to the next slide. So recognizing the triangle. One of the biggest keys to this is if we feel helpless. If we feel helpless, then we're depending on other people's. We're sourcing our self-esteem from other people. If the answer is out of our wheelhouse and up to someone else, that's another key component to this. So enabling behavior, constant conflict, a lack of resolution, emotional exhaustion, or the blame game. Anytime we start blaming other people, there's an ancient Chinese proverb that hit me like a 2x4 in the forehead. And the ancient Chinese proverb goes, a person that blames others has a long way to go on their journey. A person who blames themselves is halfway along their journey. A person who blames no one has arrived. Anytime we notice ourselves starting to blame, shame, or get mad at someone else, it's an indication we've just stepped out of our power dynamic. We're now subject to someone else. When we can get to a place where we're ceasing the blaming game and just accepting it for what it is, then we can begin to step out of the drama triangle. When we can accept and look whatever it is in the face and just say it is what it is, that sets us free to then take a course or direction to a solution. Or we might decide this person, who may be a friend or a family member who's in the drama triangle, we might choose not to be with them in that anymore. And if we quit playing, we'll start to notice people dropping out of our lives because they can't source what they need from us in a detrimental way anymore. But the idea of valuing our own peace of mind, valuing our own sense of self-respect, and honoring that is the beginning of being a self-actualized human being, an agent of light in service to the highest good, a channel of love. When we can start to value that, then our vagus nerve gets connected, our cortisol levels drop, our executive functions start to come on. The light of our own true nature begins to exhibit itself when we can honor our own self-respect and find value in that. And the fact that this drama triangle we've been playing out, my goodness, it's in every movie, TV show. If you were to go online and start scrolling randomly, you would see the drama triangle come up over and over again. Because for many of us, it's all we know. It's all we know because we were not given the space to express our needs. To express our needs and just say, I'm feeling. Let's go to the next slide. So stepping out, the assertive role. From the victim to the creator, to recognize your own power to influence outcomes. We're not victims. We're not persecutors, and we're not saviors. We are human beings here. And the experience we have within us is where it all starts, and how we reach out to others is of critical importance. And I believe the beginning is just being willing to look at ourselves with a sense of curiosity and a kind-heartedness, a tender-heartedness. Because many of us are broken little children in grown-up bodies, and it's never too late for us to start to figure stuff out. We have the rest of our lives to work on this. We have the rest of our lives to grow and to learn. Imagine being in a place where our happiness and self-esteem is not subject to the economy or institutions or governments or who the president is. We walk through this earth with our heads held high, knowing that we are enough right now and we have a right to be here. From the rescuer to the helper, offer support without taking over. In my ministry school, we have a teacher who teaches us, this is one of her big things. And what she'll do is she'll say, when someone's crying, let them cry unless they ask for a tissue. Don't go up and touch them unless they ask for comfort. It's not our job to rescue or save them. Honor them where they are, hold space for them, but let them have nothing's wrong when someone cries. So let someone ask you for help. If they don't ask for help, honor them. Even if you see them failing, honor their failure. Failure is not losing. We learn through failure. Failure is one of the greatest teachers. So is suffering. Allowing someone to suffer. Suffering is one of the greatest teachers we've ever had. It's a beautiful teacher. I don't think we're designed to suffer. I don't think suffering's home base. But suffering is something that's teaching us to do something different. From prosecutor to assertive communicator. State needs clearly and respectfully. I cannot begin to say how vulnerable I am to say I need something. It is really hard for me to say I need help. I need you. It is really hard for me to say. But I've realized that I can't do it all. And something I'm realizing is that people want to help me. People want to help me. And for me to be humble enough to accept help and allow help and then to see people respond is really beautiful because I'm not alone. I've spent a lot of my life feeling like I had to do it all and with a sense of spite. With a sense of spite, I have lived my life. And it has been painful. As your attorney, I don't advise you to live your life in spite. Focus on I statements. I feel, I need. In the way I learned relationships, and it's a heartbreaking way to learn relationships, is being right's more important than being happy. Trying to win an argument. It took me being with someone who I could not out crazy their crazy. I could not win an argument. Facts didn't matter. Ration didn't matter. Actual reality didn't. There's no way I could win this argument. And it broke me. I was broken. And through that brokenness, I've been able to come to a point where if I can just say, well, that made me feel hurt. Or that made me feel disrespected. I'm not trying to prove that they're wrong. I can just say that made me feel this way. And also, too, growing up in a house where I was not allowed to feel, I was not allowed to emote, trying not to make those same mistakes as a parent, like with my kids, To just say, I hear that you feel this way. How can I honor the way that you feel? It doesn't mean that I think that they should be feeling that. It's just accepting that they feel this way is really empowering, because I don't have to spin, I don't have to manipulate, I don't have to discount, I don't have to justify, analyze. I don't need 4 out of 5 dentist survey to agree. It's just if I feel this way, if you feel a certain way, how can I honor that? It takes me completely out of a drama triangle to try to manipulate acceptance or responses. Just as an example of this, in how for survival we learn to manipulate instead of to simply ask. I have cats. I had to adopt these cats. A friend of mine had to get rid of these cats, so I ended up with these cats. And it's not that I don't love cats, but these cats came meowing at my door. I'm not a cat person, and I'm not going to have cats meowing at my door. So I grabbed the broom and I shook the broom a couple of times, and the cats got the feeling that, I don't want them meowing at my door. So what the cats do is, I'll get up and I'll walk into the kitchen and the cats will run right in front of me. I don't want them, meowing at me. I just don't. And so they've learned to run in front, but they've learned to do this because meowing, they know I don't want meowing. I grew up in a home where I wasn't allowed to say I felt a certain way. If I felt hurt, I was not allowed, that was weak. If I felt hurt, if I needed something, that was a hassle. So I learned to manipulate, like other people. I've used humor, I've used guilt, I've used shame, I've used trying to be dominant to manipulate, because I was not allowed to say, I need your attention. Or wow, imagine being able to say, I really need to be loved. I really need someone just to hear me. And the thing is in our relationship, I know if my daughter came up to me or my wife and said, I just really need to be loved, right? I would want to love them like you have no idea. Just for a simple request, instead of manipulating. Instead of finding something to piss someone off, because having anger is better than no attention at all. If we can just begin, just baby steps, begin to use I feel, I need statements with each other. And some of the things is we've built relationships on the drama triangle, and that it's okay. It's okay. Can we just look at it with a little bit of curiosity so that we can grow, so that this time we spend in these bodies being human isn't wasted repeating the same mistakes over and over again, because we are worthy of more than that. Let's go to our next slide, love. Here we got some practical strategies. Pause and observe. Cultivate self-awareness by noticing your own triggers. Goodness sakes, our relationship with ourselves is the most important relationship of our life. When we wake up in the morning, we wake up inside of ourselves. Is that a nice place to be? Most of my life, I will tell you, waking up inside of myself was a nightmare. When we go to sleep at night, is it a peaceful place to be inside of ourselves? It's possible that it can be. That's one of the biggest victories of this life that I've discovered, and this is from working the steps of AA, and this is from making amends and admitting my faults, that I treasure more than all the money in the world is I can lay down in my bed at night, and I can go review my day, and I can forgive, and I can set free, and I can feel a sense of peace within myself at night. We're all worthy of that. Take responsibility. Own your part in the dynamic. Shift from blaming others to acknowledging your contributions. This is so empowering. Forgiveness is not weak. Forgiveness is empowering. To be able to be in a place to say, I forgive you or I forgive me, that's a state of empowerment. The idea that forgiveness is weak is a lie. It's a bald-faced lie. Communicate assertively. Express your needs, feelings, and thoughts clearly and respectfully without passive aggression or passivity. And let's have kindness and grace for others, because many of us don't know another way yet. If we knew another way, we would do it. If you grew up with a passive-aggressive mom, I believe it's inevitable for you to live your life without being passive and aggressive sometime. But if we can simply say, hey, you're being a little passive and aggressive right now. Can we look at this in another way? Can we call it out with each other gently and kindly with curiosity? Because this isn't about shame. We've unconsciously, unknowingly, innocently been tricked into these behaviors because we needed to fill a need, because we were given a bad pattern. But if we can just accept it for what it is and then maybe choose again. And even if we just do it once, if just once in the next day or the next year, you recognize you're following this pattern and choose another way, then that neural pathway is beginning to form. And it's a way to freedom. Stepping out of the drama triangle is a way to freedom. We were designed to be free. We thrive when we feel freedom. Our freedom is not subject to the outside environment. Freedom comes from the inside out, and we're the only ones who have a key to that lock. Seek win-win solutions. Focus on collaboration rather than competition or sacrifice. The idea with competition, goodness sakes, this was like an enlightening moment for me, and it happened in a meditation, but there's no victory for me in another's defeat, and there's no defeat for me in another's victory, because my self-esteem comes from the inside out. It's not sourced from anything outside. There's no victory for me in another's defeat. There's no defeat for me in another's victory. Let's go to our next slide, love. Building a triangle-free future. Understand the drama triangle. Recognize the persecutor, the rescuer, and the victim roles and their unhelpful patterns. Identify the signs. Watch for constant conflict, lack of resolution, or an emotional drain. Shift your role. Move from victim to creator, rescuer to helper, persecutor to assertive communicator. Practice key skills. Implement pausing. Pausing. That's one of the biggest things meditation gave to me, is instead of just reacting, and I got a quick wit, and I got a lethal tongue, and I can cause more damage in 3 seconds than anybody has a right to do. But to pause. And through meditation, it was like instead of me just reacting, and I could be reacting at a wound that came from when I was 9 years old. It might not have anything to do with what someone's saying to me right now. It's for some reason that's triggering a wound where I am full blast attack. Meditation gave me that pause, just that gap, where instead of reacting, I have that pause. And I can choose a wiser way. I can choose a more loving way. I can hold my own wounds for a moment before I pause. I can realize it's really not about, my reaction isn't about this moment. Instead of just being blindly reacting to life, I can act out of wisdom. I can act out of some sense of grace. I can see that this moment is bigger than I am. Implementing pausing, taking responsibility, being assertive with our communications. Boundary setting. I'm still a baby at boundary setting. Setting boundaries is still really hard for me. I've done it now enough times, I see the wisdom in it, and I'm improving in that, but to just be able to set a healthy boundary is a ninja Jedi superpower. And if we can just practice it a little bit, or just see the ability that we have to set boundaries, because we are precious jewels of a loving cosmos, and we have power. And this is just, to me, these are basic building blocks of being a better version of ourselves and having a stronger connection with whatever it is that created us. It's funny when I go back to ministry school, they'll use the word God. There's no problem, and I'll try to say, well, on the West Coast, it's kind of hard to use the word God. And I remember I asked the question, what is God? And the answer I got in a dream is that God is an infinitely reoccurring undulation of light, sound, frequency, vibration flowing through and around all things and encompassing the spaces in between. Sometimes I call it Jerome, sometimes I call it Carl, sometimes Sally, I don't know, but whatever that is, I know I didn't create myself. I know that something spun this all into existence, and I know that I got a ticket to ride, and I would rather love. And the drama triangle's been a big deal for me in my own way of understanding myself and coming to a place where I feel like I'm closer to whatever that God thing is. Good orderly direction, divine wisdom, whatever that is, I feel like I'm closer to that as I get to know myself. So I invite you all just to open your hearts with a sense of curiosity and lighthearted charm. Let's look at ourselves. None of this has to be tragic. Our lives don't have to be defined by the families we grew up in or the mistakes we've made or the patterns we've held. We are free to change. In fact, change is the only constant we can count on in this existence. Let's ride that wave instead of being beaten up by it, and I wish you all the best.